So since the last Subcontrabassoon video, I've been doing a lot of, less interesting work behind the scenes to get the instrument ready for the next phase. So I completely disassembled everything. I cleaned up a lot of the body joints. I acetone smoothed everything. So if you notice it looking shinier than it used to, that's why. I also made a new wing joint with tone holes. So this will definitely be able to play the full chromatic range from open F down to low A with the addition of an F sharp trill key. I've also made a new tube assembly. Now this is for testing of harmonic vents. Right now, this instrument has 17 harmonic vents. Now the actual final version won't have near that many, somewhere between like 5 and 8, depending on how high I plan to go, or how high I go, and how many vents are needed for some of those octave vents. But before I finish putting everything together, I wanted to quickly show off and try out what I call the low C configuration. So, like a contrabassoon, the instrument, the plan is for the instrument to be put in a case more or less complete. The complex connections between joints just really aren't going to lend themselves well to being disassembled like a bassoon. And I will say, putting this thing together and taking it apart is a bit of a workout. Whereas the contrabassoon really only has two parts, the instrument and the vocal, or at least most contrabassoons, the subcontrabassoon is going to have three. There's going to be the bulk of the instrument, the vocal, and the bell. Now, as sort of a fortunate, half accident, half plan, without the bell, it should get a pretty good low C, which means that if you didn't need any low B's, low B flats, or low A's, you could make the instrument a little more compact and lighter by just not using the bell. And I'm going to show that off right now. So this whole top piece will be held in place by some of these thumb screws. Unlike the rest of the bins are held in place with nuts that you need to use a screwdriver. These are thumb nuts. So you'd remove those 4 up here, and then these 3 along the side, and the top piece will lift off. So here, this is the part of the instrument that is just used for low B flat, and low A. So I'm going to set this aside real quick. So now we have what I'm calling the low C configuration. And I have all of the tone holes taped up to be able to play a low C. And I've already tested this, and the intonation is really quite good. Annoyingly, the intonation on the low C is better in the low C configuration than in the low A configuration. Eventually what I'm going to need to do is make this tone hole much larger. This is the low C tone hole, the tone hole that's closed by the low B key. In the original plan, it's a little bit undersized because the ideal location of the tone hole would have been up here on the bend or on the tenon. So I undersized the tone hole a little bit to get it on the bass section. But since this whole area of the instrument's tending quite flat, what I'll need to do is open that tone hole up. But anyway, the size and position of that tone hole shouldn't affect the intonation of the low C when it's played in the low C configuration, which is what I'm going to be doing now. Okay, what's going on? So if I did actually find a tuning application that'll test down to low C. So I'm taking a look at that. It's a tiny bit sharp. But I can adjust it flat. So like I always tell my students, if you can play a note flat and you can play a note sharp, that means you can play it in tune. And on the tuner, that last one was coming up right in tune. Anyway, so I'm about to reinstall the bell and do a lot of harmonic vent testing, because this should, there are not only a full complement of octave vents, but there's 3 of each octave vents in different locations to try out. I also have 3 different third harmonic vent locations, once again, to try out, to try to solve that problem where I wasn't able to find a good fingering for high F sharp. And then I've also added, just to see what happens, this vent here, as far towards the vocal as I can get without putting a vent on the vocal itself, which I'd really rather avoid. I don't think the squeak notes are going to be terribly useful on subcontrabassoon, but with this vent I was able to get a pretty solid high D the other day. It's not going to work now because I have all the tone holes in a different configuration, but it's probably going to be some wonky harmonic. So there's a reason, for example, on bassoon, you wouldn't play a low C and then open up the high D key. That's not what it's for. Anyway, I thought you all would want to see the low C configuration before it's fully assembled. I hope you all have a great day, and I look forward to sharing with all of you the results of the harmonic vent testing after I finish that.